Welcome, welcome, welcome to our official session 2, Lost Mines of Phandelver, Survivor Edition, Masochist. So, I'm going to begin with a recap. And last time we stepped outside of our official campaign in order to have a combat simulation. And this was really to playtest our new system. We're still a relatively young group in terms of not having played together. Now we have two sessions under our collective belt. And as a result of our playtesting, we modified the shields. And you guys are going to have to forgive my pronunciation, but the shields are more like Pavis shields. Pavis shields historically were set in the ground and they were used as cover. There are a lot of different shields used throughout history, but the Pavis was an oblong shield used primarily during the 14th, 16th centuries. And it was used by archers, crossbowmen, and other infantry soldiers. Now, you can read up on this. They were also used earlier, and, full body shields are a thing, tower shields. And so that is really the style of shields that we're going for. We've removed the base AC from them, and so now they just offer half cover or three-quarters cover, depending. But they still have a certain amount of hit points. We have also given armor hit points, and this was part of the rules, but I don't think that it came up last time. So if the armor, the AC modifier that the armor gives is exceeded by double, say, for example, the AC modifier is +3 and the damage does +6, it will damage the armor. And when the armor breaks, or rather when the armor hits 0 HP, we roll on the armor injury table. So this is going to make armor a little more interesting. And because armor can defend against a lethal blow, mostly because armors have resistance, sometimes they have resistance against all slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning. Sometimes it's just one. Occasionally, they might have vulnerability. Maybe it's bludgeoning, maybe it's slashing. It depends on the type of armor, but we've kind of gone for a slightly more historical twist here. So armor is not something that you can wade through thousands of battles and expect to be in one piece. That's the thing. We also made a couple of changes, notably to the sharpshooter feat. We found that Pius's privateer with his saber and his pistol, it didn't quite capture the feel of what we were going for, with a sword in one hand and a pistol in the other. And yeah, we could have leaned towards the crossbow expert, but instead I leaned more towards the polearm master. So now he can make a bonus action attack for 1d4 plus dex, using either his saber if he's in close combat, or his pistol, whether he's in close combat or not. And I'm not going to be applying the disadvantage at close range if he's got his pistol, because he has the sharpshooter feat. For others, we'll see, but I'm assuming that pistols will not take the disadvantage up close and personal. So we may tweak the rules as we go forwards, but that's about the gist of it. Our player characters still have their rechargeable abilities. Not all of them got used during the combat simulation, so that's something they need to remember. The onus is on them to remember that, not me. And we're also counting ammunition. Now, it's possible that we may miscount, but we're still playing, and the goal is to have fun. We're not going to be sticklers for accuracy. We're just going to be as accurate as we can. So without further ado, I'm going to recap where we left off, and we're going to go from there. And last time we met Gundren. We met Sildar. And we learned that the party had been working with Gundren for a few months, going from excavation to excavation. Gundren was looking for the second part of the map. His dear old father, Pappy, told him on his deathbed, made him swear on his deathbed to go find the key to the map. And the map was somewhat coded, and there was a location which the clan Rockseeker went and poured over. It's something of a rite of passage for them, and so they kept looking. They couldn't find anything there. But old Pappy Rockseeker, well, he said that with the second part of the map, the key, it would lead to a different location. And Gundren spent about 30 years searching and very frustrated. But then he found that it was actually hidden in plain sight by a spell in one of the old Rockseeker clan holds. So that is where the adventure began. Well, it actually began in the tavern, but the adventure proper began in that excavation. And so going from there, the party found a couple of orc scouts, and they discovered that they'd actually been expertly assassinated. Someone had shot them with poison needles, which put them to sleep, and while they were sleeping, sliced them open and let them bleed out and die. Now, the party didn't actually identify the orc markings and didn't know where they were from. And I'm not going to actually spoil that. But the orcs came from somewhere. And then the party made it down to the town of Leyland. And that is where Sildar and Gundren parted ways. It turned out that Gundren's brother was supposed to be bringing reinforcements from Neverwinter. And they overheard the party, which I believe it was Pius's character, actually, through a seeking stone that there might have been some kind of trouble. So Sildar and Gundren went off to check that out and left the party with the caravan of giant goats. And within the caravan of giant goats, there were four rather interesting persons, shall we say. They were led by the elf, Iverna the Nightbreeze, and she was in riveted chainmail with a long saber, and she took an instant disliking to Notus, possibly because Notus was an elf, and elves in this version, the homebrew version that we're playing, they're somewhat rare, and they have their own social mores. And she didn't like the way that Notus kept mispronouncing Sildar. Now, she clearly has some respect for Sildar, possibly great respect. Maybe we'll find out, maybe we won't. But she had respect for Sildar, and she felt that Notus's deliberate and continual mispronunciation of Sildar as Stildar or Stilgar was actually exceptionally offensive. Now, it wasn't entirely clear whether she felt that Notus was doing himself a disservice or he was just being disrespectful. But either way, she was not pleased. Then there was Pickled Pete, and Pickled Pete was a rather interesting fellow who was the driver and reeked of alcohol. These are actually sidekicks from the Dragon of Icespire Peak. So I didn't come up with these ones. And then there was Talon. And Talon is the youngest member of the Giant Goat Caravan, and he basically acts as some kind of shepherd. But Iverna the Nightbreeze is in charge, and she's kind of the captain, and she keeps an eye on the train. But then there was the fourth personage, and we didn't really learn too much about him. He was lying in the back of the hay wagon, because with the Giant Goat Caravan, there was a hay wagon in order to feed the goats. And he was lying with a broad-rimmed hat across his face. And he had a piece of hay sticking out of his mouth. And he was, I guess, what you would say, shooting the breeze and just riding in the back. And so our three intrepid heroes, or anti-heroes, as the case may be, joined up And so together there are now 7 of them. And their task is to escort the giant goat caravan to the town of Phanderlin. And there they are to make contact with the town master, because Gundren wants to set up a base camp outside of the site he believes houses this lost mine with its vast and great treasure. But he wants to keep the supply chain open. He wants to keep the supply lines open. And that means logistics. And that means rendezvousing with the town. But before we jump back into the goat train, we are going to have a flashback. And so prior to the beginning of the game, somewhere within one of the excavations, Gundren summons each of you as a group. And Sildar is standing guard, being cold and stern and keeping watch. His eyes like steel as he gazes out from the top tower of the clan hold. And this tower is carved into the rock. For the entire clan hold was carved into the rock. This is one of the ruins. And this one was a small clan hold. It was one of the many excavations that all of you have been up and down over the recent months. And this one held a few of the clan records. Most of them had been destroyed by moth and by decay. And it had been abandoned, sealed by the last of the rock seekers before they left. But this one was just an outpost. And so Sildar stood at the top of this particular tower looking out into the mountains. And Gundren gathered you all around. And there was a hearth, because hearths are very important in dwarf culture. It is a sign of friendship, of family, of the clan, of the gathering together of people. And that's where they would feast and they would drink and they would share tales and they would talk about ancient glories. And this is where you heard a little bit more of the great treasure of the Lost Mine. And he was talking to you about this thing called the Forger's Spells. And so back in the day, there was the Phandelver Pact. And this was maybe 500 years ago. But Gundren didn't use years. He spoke in generations. And so he said 6 generations ago, there was the Phandelver Pact. It was a joining of my people and yours. And he points to Notus. And when I say points, I mean he gestures with this flagon. Because Gundren, when he's telling his tales, he always has a flagon in hand. And he gestures and says, my people and yours and his. And he gestures to Sildar. And the town of Phanderlin. The old tales say that it was a town to behold. It was a sight of glory where there was feasting and there were clan holds, not just of the rock seekers, but of others. And there were elf holds and dwarf holds, and there were 3 taverns. In fact, and he chuckles at this, there was a story about a giant, and they say that the town of Phandelin was established on the head of an ancient giant, a sleeping giant, buried under the ground. And the story goes, and this is where his eyes grow distant, and he recalls, it was back during great-great-grandpappy's day, when great-great-grandma, she was good friends with, oh, I don't quite remember the name. I think her name was Silver Spinner. She was an elf, some sorceress. And she was old. She was old when she told great-great-grandma this story. And she said that there was a time when the giants roamed the land. And this particular giant, he had established his nest was a crater with hills. He established his nest, and she and several others, they were searching for something or other. I don't remember what it was. It might have been a mirror, it might have been an obelisk. It was something. The stories vary. But she was searching for something, and they ran across this giant, and it turns out that this was the giant's hold. Anyway, the story goes the giant roared and challenged them, and he wouldn't accept a riddle, which makes for a bad story. This isn't a good tale. It's not a good tale of heroics. But he wouldn't accept a challenge of riddles or a challenge of wit. And so the sorceress, Silver Spinner, she cast imprisonment. And the bowels of the earth rose up and snatched him and dragged him down. And it is said that on that very site, Phandelver was established, which is why there was a tavern there called the Sleeping Giant. And then he laughed, and he took another swig, and he said, "Let us never find out." And he told you about other stories. And he told you about the Forger's spells, where the elves drew deep and ancient magics, high elf magic, the high magic of ancient times, while there were still spells that were great and powerful, and they could shape the continents and shatter them. Before the goddess of magic made it so mortals could not draw upon such powerful magics again. And he went on for a while. And after telling you all of this, he opened up a chest, a stone chest, and he said, "These are part of the old clan, part of our friendship. We kept these for our visitors, our guests. These are relics. But I would like you, my friends, to have these." And what he brought out, wrapped in cloth, in linens, in sackcloth, were 3 dwarven breastplates. And this was dwarven craftwork. And he said that they were tempered in the fires of the forgers, not by the forger's spells, but by the forgers of the town, made by his clan. And they were given as gifts to those who were friends and allies of the clan of the Rock Seekers. And these breastplates, they're made of darkened steel. And the breastplate itself was a solid plate. And there was a skirt to go with it, known as a tassus. And this skirt was stylized, and you could see that there was elven craftsmanship, not just dwarven craftsmanship, but elven craftsmanship. And the stylized leaves of elven scale mail had been added to this breastplate. And in gaming terms, the armor acts as 3/4 cover, with resistance against bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing weapons. And it has 10 HP. It gives you a modifier of 5 AC, but it doesn't allow you to add your dexterity bonus to it. And so Gundren presents each one of you with this. And he says that if it doesn't fit, lads, we'll get it fitted for you. And so over the months, he worked on it bit by bit, cold hammering to fit it to each one of you individually. And with that, we will jump back to the present. And this is just one of the many stories you might recall of Gundren as he might slap you on the arm, while Sildar, with his steely gaze, gazes out to the distant horizon, ever aware of threats which could be lurking in the darkness. What goes on in his mind? Oh, that's something for you to discover. And so now, back to the present. You are with the giant goats. There are the 4 security, shall we say, with them. And we did establish a party order, but I'm going to let you guys move that order around. I believe you positioned yourself at the back of the giant goat caravan. What would you like to do? It is a patchy day with some sunshine. The road is long and it is windy and it goes over hills. There is forest, not particularly deep forest, but dark forest either side. And I believe that the season is autumnal, and so there's a slight chill to the air. So what would you like to do?
I think Joe will be just sitting in a wagon, staring off into the sky, contemplating everything.
Notice you'll sit with Joe for a bit, stare off, kind of get bored, get up, get out of the cart as it's going along, and wait, hold on. Are these carts going at faster speeds, or is it a trot? Like, is it like, are people walking alongside of it, or are there people like, what speed are we going at?
The giant goats are walking. These goats are maybe the size of large ponies, and they are just walking at a leisurely pace.
Since we're sort of in the back, I will make my way to the next people in line in this caravan.
Okay, well, the hay wagon is squarely in the middle of the goat train, and you have Pickled Pete as your driver, and you have the so far unnamed security guy with the broad hat still sucking on his long piece of hay. And somewhere up near the front, you see Talon walking up and down the whole train, while Iverna, the Night Breeze, leads the entire caravan with a saber at her side and a staff in her hand. And like Sildar, she has that steely gaze watching over the horizon.
I'll come up alongside Pickle Pete and the broad hat man, and I'll say, greetings. You are known as Pickled Pete, I hear?
He looks down at you, and the fellow lying in the back of the cart on the hay doesn't pay you any mind. And Pickle Pete says, "Yep."
Splendid. I was wondering if I may pick your brain as we watch over our various assets and uh, providers. I would hope that we could build a camaraderie to pass the time, an experience that I hope we can both walk away from uh, with relatively positive memories and fond recollections.
Yep.
I guess so. What do you enjoy to do on these roads? You've walked them a lot. They seem you are comfortable with the landscape. I hope to be comfortable with them myself, as to better perform my duties.
He looks at you, and then he looks at his belt, and he holds up his flask, and he holds it up to his squinting eye, and then he sticks out his tongue and catches the last drop. And then he looks at you, and he raises his eyebrow.
Mm. Duly noted, sir.
Yep.
Have you ever had the fair elven wine? of Loudwater, just south of Waterdeep, or east, somewhere in the general direction south of here. Have you ever had the elf wine from Loudwater?
Yep.
Really, the mint and the chestnut brew has a slight sparkle at the end.
Yep.
So you are somewhat of a spirit connoisseur, shall we say?
He shrugs.
I see. Well, let me not disturb your deep thoughts and reminiscings of fine spirits. Take care,
He
and
gives
I
you a
will.
very strange look and simply goes back to slapping the reins against the oxen drawing the hay cart and returns to counting goats. And every so often you hear a small, "Hey up, yup, hey up, yup, yup."
Fine,
Hey,
fellow.
Pius, what is your character up to?
Corvus is currently taking up the rear, just generally keeping an eye out. He is there as security, so security he will be.
As this is going on, Talon has walked past Notus and has currently made his way to where Joe Mip is. And since Joe is the only one in the wagon, I'm going to assume that he's driving it, as we have Corvus guarding the rear. And so Talon wanders up and he looks up at you and he says, "All clear?
So far,
All clear." And he continues to walk backwards towards Corvus.
Corvus will look up and acknowledge him.
And as Talon walks up, he says, "All clear?
I haven't seen anything.
All clear." And then he turns around and walks back. And you get the distinct impression that your companions might be, shall we say, limited in their use of phrases. At least that's what they seem to have occupied themselves with. What would you like to do, Notus?
Walk back to where Corvus is and walk alongside him and say, "Fine vocabulary these people have."
You're telling me. I don't think
one-
I've heard more than 5 words from any of them this entire time.
Yeah, and in the same combination. Yep. Sitting by themselves, steely grins. It's like looks communicate more than verbal response here. Must not be a lot to stimulate their speech.
I can't blame them.
Mm.
If I did this every day, there wouldn't be much to say for me either.
Yeah.
Here to more or less collect pay, and I can't fault them for that.
Yeah, no fault here, I feel, but definitely a boredom. It hangs over us. This is an important work. Silgar is a good
Don't
man.
that. Don't think of it like that. We're not standing around waiting for something to happen. We are standing around dreading for something to happen.
Dreading.
Boring is good.
You're right. You're right. I'm getting caught in my own thoughts. I'm should just I wish I picked up knitting. Something just to pass this time. It's weighing on me. Joe seems to be doing fine, staring off into the big blue yonder. Just walk alongside, just kind of keeping with it.
Everybody, roll perception. So, what did everybody get for their perception roll?
13.
I got an 8.
Got a dirty 20.
What happens is this. Corvus and Notus, you were so engrossed with your conversation about boredom and knitting and passing the time and keeping an eye out that you don't notice the shadow between the clouds. But you do, Joe. As you stare off into the great blue yonder, your eyes see that which others do not. And between the clouds, you see the beginnings of a shape. A terrible and dark shape. At first, you just think that it's another cloud casting shadows. You even think, well, that's an interesting shape for a cloud. It looks almost like a dragon.
Oh boy.
A white dragon. How would you like to respond, Joe?
So at this point, I am definitely sure that it is a dragon.
It's at least 300 feet above you
Okay.
in the patchy clouds.
In that case, I'm definitely gonna alert everyone with a simple word. At the top of my lungs, I yell, "Dragon!"
Roll me a wisdom check before you do that.
Okay. Let's see, what's my wisdom over here? Anything specific or just straight wisdom?
Just a straight wisdom.
All right. 6.
You believe that the very best thing you could possibly do is yell at the very top of your lungs. Roll me a performance check, please.
Alrighty then. $16.
Now, the reason I asked you for a performance check was a volume check. It could have been Constitution, but I felt performance was better. 16 is four away from 20, and 20 would have been exceptionally loud. And you get the feeling maybe that everybody hears you, because Verna, the Night Breeze, at the top, immediately holds up her fist and stops the goat train, which is quite a feat, as it so happens. Even Pickled Pete blinks awake, as it were, out of his stupor. The only one who doesn't sit up is your patted friend, who continues to lie there, chewing on his piece of hay. The rest of the caravan stops. And wouldn't you know it, the shape in the sky stops moving, almost as if yelling at the very top of your lungs might actually have been heard.
No one ever said Joe was the brightest.
Hence the wisdom check.
Exactly.
What would you like to do, all of you?
Oh boy.
I am going to stand at the ready, I guess. My immediate thought is going to turn to getting the goats off of the road. Better to have to recapture them later than to have them all eaten up.
Indeed.
But for the time being, I'm going to hold my action until it becomes abundantly clear what we're dealing with.
So, Corvus, do you have your saber and your flintlock drawn?
Yes.
Wonderful. Notice, what is it that you do?
I will take 1 second, say and then I will pull out my throwing daggers just at the ready, like Corvus is doing with his gun and saber. And I will look to Corvus as well and say, that's your go, sir.
Joe, having just yelled loud enough to make the trees tremble and the tops of the trees quiver. You would have made Gundren proud. What would you like to do?
I would like to step out of the wagon, or step off of, rather, and ready my shields, the heavier shields.
While this is going on, Iverna the Night Breeze orders the goats to actually begin to herd and gather into two groups. And you can't quite hear what she's saying. And to your utter amazement, the goats actually obey her. Now, perhaps it's never occurred to you before how goats the size of ponies would actually listen and obey a humanoid command. But you see it right before your eyes. And the goats actually step off the trail and gather into two groups, leaving only the abandoned cart with the oxen and the cart pulled by Pickled Pete. And Talon runs over to Averna even as she starts marching towards you. And she points towards the goats. And Talon, staff in hand, runs towards the goats. And meanwhile, it looks as if the shadow has stopped. And you can't see it stretched out. Now, Joe, you know where the dragon is. But Corvus and Notus, you do not. So would you like to make me 2 more perception checks, unless Joe would like to point out to you where the dragon is? But of course, you and Joe are, shall we say, 60 feet apart at this point? Does that sound fair to you guys, or would you prefer it to be 45?
I worked with Corvus, so it's up to him.
Yeah, I'm good either way.
Sounds fair.
All right, we'll say it's 45 feet apart, and we'll say that Iverna is 60 feet away from you, Joe. So she's at the top, and Corvus is at the back. And
All right.
he's going to saunter over to the goats, to the other group of goats. Whereas the last security, unnamed, hat guy, remains lying down, completely unconcerned. So, would you like to do anything while Iverna approaches you? It will be enough for you to speak or perform some kind of action, and then she'll be on you.
I think Joe would probably call out. Do I realize that, looking back at them, do I realize that they haven't seen where it is?
That is an excellent question. Would you two chaps like to roll me perception and tell me if you were looking around for the dragon or if you were just on guard?
I am looking around.
I am
Same.
looking around as well.
I like this
And
so far.
oh yeah, same with you. We're dumbfounded. I'm a 5.
Okay, so I believe you said that was a 6 pass and that was a 5, Peter.
Correct.
Where is this thing?
So you
Sorry, what?
may actually disbelieve Joe at this point. You have no idea where the dragon is. You cannot see it. It's up to you if you choose to disbelieve him. But what were you saying, Joe?
I'm going to whistle over to them to get their attention and then point at it.
Okay, both of
Oh
you
boy.
make me perception checks again, this time with advantage.
Yeah, because it is white against the clouds, so
Exactly. And the sun is coming through patchy clouds. So, chaps, what did you roll for your perception?
18.
Okay, I believe that was a 20 pious. So with a roll of 18 and a roll of 20, you do see this shifting white upon white, this slightly shimmering, slightly off-color, serpentine, draconic shape between the clouds. And it has turned its head towards you. And it's 300 feet in the sky, at least.
Oh boy.
With that, Averna the Night Breeze walks over to you, Joe, and she is striding. For the audience at home, we will say that she used the dash action. So she is striding and she walks over to you quickly. And her eyes are grim. And she looks at you and says, "What in the nine hells were you thinking?"
I was thinking that the party should know about the dragon.
You roared loudly enough that you caught its attention. You may have killed us all.
Yes, well, then we'll go down fighting.
She looks at you with utter disgust. And then she marches over towards Corvus and Notus. Would you like to do anything, Joe Mib? Are you going to follow her or are you going to hold position?
I am going to follow. Well, actually, where are the two groups of goats at this point?
They're off on the side of the road. One of them
Okay.
is with Pickled Pete, one of them is with Talon. Say it's on your left. If you are heading towards Phanderlin with Leyland behind you, and it's already been, let's say, 5 hours or so, we'll say that it's late afternoon. I don't quite remember where we left off for the first session, so we'll say that it's late afternoon. We'll say that they're on your left, having dismounted from the cart, off the trail, and it's a mud road, dirt road.
Okay. Yeah, in that case, I will hold position by the wagon.
Okay, and the oxen is next to you.
Yes.
Okay, so you hold position, and Iverna of the Night Breeze, without her saber drawn, simply staff in hand, marches over to Corvus and to Notus, and she looks you dead in the eyes, Corvus, and she snaps at you. Why can't you keep your people in check?
Corvus is really annoyed by this, actually. There are bigger things to worry about, literally. And he's not even going to dignify that with a response. He's just going to look around the sky, trying to keep his eye on the dragon, watching what it does.
We apologize for our companions' lack of discernment and of handling the situation. However, there is still the fact of the dragon, ma'am. So, since you are the leader of this merry band of goats, we are dumbfounded as you by its appearance, but we still have to respond to this current crisis.
She ignores you completely, and her eyes continue to bore into Corvus, and she says, "And what do you propose?"
What do I propose? Getting off the road.
Then take charge of your people and get them off the road. And then she about faces and marches towards her people. Well, I say that, but the hatted guy is still lying in the back of the wagon, still sucking on his piece of hay. If anything, he's actually crossed his boots, one foot over the other, and he's leaning back with his fingers interlocked and his elbows spread. What would you like to do?
I am going to run towards Joe, motion for Notice to follow me.
I shall
And
follow.
Specifically, I'm going to run along the side of the road. Is there a tree line that's right next to the pathway, or is it just out in the open?
There is a tree line, yes, on both sides of the path, but it's not right next to it. You've got about 15, 20, 25 feet, depending on where you are, where the dirt path is. So there's grass and then there's trees. At least in this particular section of the trail.
In that case, I'm going to move over to the tree line and then run along it until I get to Joe.
Okay, well, Joe is in the middle of the road with the wagon, with his shields and the ox.
I mean, until I'm in roughly the same area where I could go out into the road and pull him off.
Wonderful. Okay, you're running along the right-hand side because the left-hand side has goats.
Yes.
That's what I assumed. Okay, so you are about 25 feet away from Joe at this point, and Joe is currently hunkered down.
What is Joe currently in? What is he doing?
Currently he is in a more protective stance, looking over the oxen.
Joe,
What?
get over here.
Someone has to keep the oxen safe.
Get over here.
Fine. And
There
I
won't-
walk over.
At this point, I would like to point out to you that your wagon does have the supplies that Gundren has entrusted you with. Not only are you security, which is kind of your cover, but that wagon has the supplies to set up the base camp in order to perform the excavation to get to the lost mine containing the treasure.
In that case, let's lead the oxen off of the road too.
Indeed.
I take my dagger and I cut the rope on the oxen, as it's the fastest way and can be easily repaired later, and lead them off to the forest.
Okay, so you abandon the wagon containing the supplies and you lead the oxen into the forest.
I'm leading the oxen, pulling the wagon.
Okay, that makes sense. Wonderful. Just to be clear here.
Yeah.
So, while this is going on, ye old dragon is circling, spiraling, one might say, and now hovering below the cloud line at about 150 feet, and it is diving fast. But it is spiraling. It's not going down for one of those dive, grab a goat, stuff it in its mouth, and fly off dives. It's just lazy. And as it slides into view, you can see its long serpentine neck. You can see its proud crest on its head, the lazy flap of its wings, the slight swish of its long tail, its sharp talons. And it circles, and it circles, and it goes lower and lower. What would you like to do before it gets to 100 feet above you?
I will cast mirror image on myself, spending 3 spell points to do so. It lasts a minute, and it gives me those alternative selves. So I'm down 3 spell points. I'll go ahead.
Sorry, what is your spell point total at this point for the viewers at home?
Oh, my current spell point total is 22, bringing me down to a 19.
Okay, you were saying?
After casting mirror image upon myself, I will ask Corvus, should we split and divert it away from the cart, or should we stand our ground and wait for him to pick up some of these goats?
We're here to run security for both the cart and the goat. I say stand our ground.
Yes, the cart was entrusted to us by people we know. Goats are replaceable.
Joe, what would you like to do?
I will. I will go ahead and cast Shield of Faith on Corvus, actually, just in case. So that is 2 extra AC for you, and that is -3 of 12 spell points for me.
Wonderful. So you now have 9 spell points.
Yep.
Meanwhile, over on the other side of the road, Iverna the Nightbreeze has not drawn her saber, but she is gripping her staff and she is looking tense. Tenser than usual. In all of her elven pride, there's the flickers of anxiety, maybe even fear, but she's holding her ground. And Pickled Pete is eyeing his flask again and trying to get the last few drops, squeezing the last few drops onto his tongue, and just sighing. Whereas Talon is enthusiastic and eager and gripping his staff so hard that his knuckles have turned white. As for the one with the hat, he continues sucking on his hay. And the dragon spirals and spirals. And now he's about 60 feet above you. At least you assume he's a he. It's a little hard to tell, to be honest. Draconic anatomy isn't exactly your forte. And, well, it's not as if there are any visible signs. And only one of you has claimed to have fought a dragon before, if I understand the backstories correctly. Would that be right, Joe?
Yes.
How about you, Corvus? Have you ever seen a dragon before while you've been out at sea?
Seen, yes. Fought, no.
Was it up close and personal?
No.
That's what I thought. And how about you, Notice? Being an urban elf in a city where dragons are seldom seen, at least flying above them, have you seen a dragon up close and personal before?
Not made of flesh and bone, but of cardboard and paper mache at festivals. So,
So this is a rather new sight to you. So Notice, please make me a frightened check. Let's use Constitution.
Constitution, okay. Natural 20.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Dude, all right. To be honest, the paper mache was a little more scary. I don't know what they put in there. This terrifying, but I can hold myself.
Okay, now for Corvus and for Joe, I would like you to make me a frightened check using your wisdom modifiers.
All right.
And Joe, you can have advantage on this.
Thank y'all. That is a 9. I mean, compared to the natural 1, it's good, but
Oh.
Okay, so it turns out that Notice is full of confidence, perhaps at the power that flows through his veins. But for whatever reason, maybe it's the fact that he has his doubles in the form of mirror image, he's not scared of this dragon. But Joe, you know how much damage dragons can do. You've seen it. You've seen it up close. If the stories are true, of course.
yes.
You know you know how dangerous dragons are. And Corvus, you remember the stories. Maybe you've even seen a ship during a storm. It's been taken down by a dragon. You've heard the stories of the sailors drowning, being snatched up. And fear grips you, both of you. And so you're going to have a -2 on any intimidation check that the dragon uses. And I'm going to rule it this way because I do not want you breaking and bolting for the trees, because that doesn't make for good role play. Now,
Understandable.
with that said, the dragon looks at you, and with his icy breath, he speaks out. And it's not a booming voice. It's a sly, serpentine, amused voice, and says, "Dragon, is that how you address me? Come now, I am the Lord of Icespire Peak. Is this how you address your rightful sovereign?"
Joe, you should say something. I think he might eat you if you don't.
Yes, well, I'm debating. Uh, Joe is literally there. He is shaking. He does not want to cross paths with a dragon again. But seeing as how it's happening, he's trying to steel himself. What is your name, great beast?
Beast, you dare refer to me as a mere beast? And he puffs out his chest.
My apologies.
Your apologies. What?
Lord.
You
Forgive my ignorance, but you haven't presented your name.
You may call me Lord Icespire. And he chuckles because, oh, just roll me a insight check, everybody here, please. Notice you get advantage to this.
5.
Okay, so Pius, what was your roll?
It was a 1.
You got a nat 1. Okay, well, this kind of makes sense given that you're a privateer and you're frightened, and Joe, you're a bounty hunter, and even though you've rubbed shoulders with nobles, you're also frightened. But Notice is a noble, and Notice is an urbane elf who has walked the streets of the city of Neverwinter. And he knows, without a shadow of a doubt, that certain nobles take their names from the land. And so this dragon has not actually given you his name. He has simply styled himself in human fashion, elven fashion, dwarven fashion, by taking the name of Icespire Peak and calling himself Lord Icespire Peak. And you understand that with his chuckle, this is his idea of a joke. He thinks it's funny. Actually, it tickles him. But you other two, you have no idea. But then again, you're not blue-blooded. What would you like to do now?
I would like to start chuckling as well. Oh, great Lord Icespire. How amusing. But how majestic, I might say as well. You come before us in all your splendor. What may we do to serve you? Clearly, we are in your land. We are merely travelers, and we wish to have safe passage through your land.
Is it not customary, little elf, to present a gift when traveling through the lands of the local lord?
It is. It very much is. But, Lord, if I may so humbly say, we had no idea of your grace's reign over this area. So we did not come prepared. But I will say, we do seek that which would be worthy of a gift, worthy of your presence here with us. So I ask for you who are so great and powerful, and I imagine your wisdom and humility knows no bounds, as well as your immaculate strength and might. Please grant us this one grace, for we will return. We shall return in splendor and pay unto you what is so forgottenly known, so unequivocally deserving of you.
He looks at you, and a flicker of disgust passes his lips. And he says, well, 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 aren't we the little sycophant? What a mewling creature you are. Well, I shall consider what gift you may bring. After all, your lives are nothing to me. But I think I will take them. You will give me your lives as your gift. You will serve me.
If I may ask, my lord, can you give us but a brief moment of regress so we may discuss this amongst ourselves?
There is no discussion. You are in my lands, and I will destroy you. I will wipe you out before you can even breathe. How dare you? How dare
Apologies.
you insult my esteemed eminence? Am I not power? Am I not majesty? Am I not the ice that slays? I will suck all warmth from your body and shatter you with a single breath. How dare you?
1,000 apologies, my lord. I am, of course, as you say, a very lowly creature. Of course, I shall give. I shall give what little I have, I suppose, given the
You
situation.
will give me your life. Please make an intimidation save, Peter. DC 18. So, Peter, what was your role?
Dirty 20.
Okay, so while you are aware of this dragon's anger, for whatever reason, you still aren't afraid. It's almost as if you believe that you can stand up to this dragon. But before you answer, I'm going to ask what Corvus and Joe Mibbs are doing. So, Corvus, what are you going to respond with to the dragon's, shall we say, temper tantrum?
Corvus has been backing into the forest slowly. He
Okay.
has absolutely no intention of being pressed into servitude by this mess. As far as he's concerned, whether it costs him his life or not, he is not living his life in service to a giant toddler.
But of course, he would never say that out loud. Right?
Okay, so how about you, Joe? What are you doing?
That was funny. Um, Joe has he's now steeled himself slightly better. And he says, "Of course, we will give our lives to you, Great One."
And at this, the dragon visibly calms down and he looks at you. And the smile that was on his face returns, and the anger, the blazing anger in his eyes, has just gone. And he looks at you and he says, I have a task for you.
And what would that be?
Keep that pointy-eared tree licker gagged. Should he speak another word, I will end him. He's your mutt. As for the task, it is really rather simple. There is another great lord of the forest, somewhere beyond the town to which you are headed. Oh, do not ask. I keep watch over these creatures as they go back and forth. He and I, she and I do not particularly care to know. We are, how do you mortals put it? Territorial dispute. The mountains are mine. The forest is his. We have ideological differences. Since you have passed through my lands and not through his, and you have yet to offer me a gift, you will serve me, and you will work against him, for he has agents of his own. You will keep your eyes out, and when the time is right, you will speak with me and tell me what you have learned. And in exchange, I will extend my benevolence towards you. For what is a lord that does not take care of his faithful vassals? No, I am nothing if not magnanimous, full of mercy. It pains me to say such things. Alas, were I to have a herald, it would say these things for me. Indeed, you do not know me, so I must state them to you. And he drops a stone, which he's been clutching in his paw, and it lands in front of you. Please make me an Arcana check.
All right.
All of you can make me an Arcana check. Peter, you get to make it at advantage. In
I
fact,
should have taken Arcana. Oh,
Elias, you get to make it at advantage because you've seen one of these things before.
now Arcana would be intelligence.
That is correct.
That's what I was afraid of.
Yeah, same here.
18.
8.
Not 5, no matter what.
Okay, so you are still concerned with the oversized, overbearing toddler who has thrown the rattle out of the proverbial cradle, Corvus. As for you, Joe, you're still intently listening to what Lord Icespire is saying, but you recognize it as a sending stone. You know that it is a stone with an arcane rune for two-way communication. But this one, it's been modified, and it does not have the usual restrictions to most sending stones because of the draconic magic which has been imbued in it. And so Lord Icespire, such as he is, continues his monologue, being very impressed with the sound of his own voice and preening slightly. and glad to be recognized and finally given the respect that he is so rightfully due by his birthright, by which I mean being born a dragon, of course, he continues. When you find these agents of the Lord of the Forest, let me know. When you need my aid, let me know. Only call not upon me frivolously. Now I must away, and away I must. Fret not, little mortals. I shall not take tribute from your goats this time. But while you're in my lands and while you address me, remember, I am sovereign of these hills and of the peak of Icespire. For behold, I am Lord Icespire, and great is my wrath, but greater is my mercy, and my ice covers the skies. And with a dramatic flourish, which can only be considered to be theatrical, he twirls and flaps away, and the clouds part under the force of his wings. How are you left feeling?
Slightly shocked, but overall relieved, definitely.
I feel so confident. I just stood my ground for a dragon. He may have not liked me, but I did not quiver, and I take pride in that.
Corvus is currently still hiding behind a tree.
Okay, so the next question is, Joe, do you pick up the sending stone?
Yes, I do.
Okay, as you pick it up, as it touches your skin, you feel a chill go through your hand, and you feel draconic magic, and you feel strangely confident. You gain a +1 to each of your saving throws, not to your armor
Sweet.
class. As long as you have the stone in your possession, as long as you are holding it, and you don't have to attune to it, but as long as you are holding it, you will receive +1.
Probably best you hold on to that. I don't think he would want to hear me speak anymore.
No, you did very well.
Nobles can't escape.
Yes, I do not envy you.
Corvus, would you like to speak?
Corvus will make his way out from behind the tree and walk back up to the road. And he will address the two. If anything like that ever happens again, and you get the thing's attention, I will shoot you myself. That
Yes,
is
understandable.
All in all, it seems to be the card's still intact. I guess you could, silver lining.
Yeah, the
While
one good
you are
thing that's come.
the golden
speaking,
lining. We got away basically unharmed.
Yes. Yes. Quite a
while
blessing.
you are speaking, Iverna the Night Breeze walks over, and for the first time that you've seen her, she has her hand gripping her scabbard. Now, her hand is not actually on the hilt of her blade, because her right hand is still carrying her staff, but her left hand is on the hilt of her scabbard, ready to draw her long saber. And she looks more wrathful than the dragon. Her face is completely calm. It is as cold as ice, but her eyes Her eyes are like storm clouds. And she is looking straight at you, Notice. And she says, from about 20 feet away, were it not for Sildar, I would strike you down where you stand. And then she turns and she walks to her position at the head of the train. And you know this is not an idle threat. This is a promise. Meanwhile, the hatted one is still sucking on a piece of hay. The goats begin to fall back into line, led by Pickled Pete and by Talon. And Pickled Pete takes up his post as driver, and everything begins to move again. Would you like to fall in with the rest of the train?
Yep.
Yeah.
With the rear.
I'll take my position back with the cart driving.
I will walk behind the carts and just think to myself, I am not very well suited for these lands.
So it's maybe a couple of hours, and the sun goes down. And it drops quite rapidly, actually. And with the dropping of the sun, or the setting of the sun, the temperature falls. And it becomes quite cold. And the stars are already out. They were out before the sun fully set. And so you see the stars shining bright and clear without any light pollution. And the goats, they keep on walking. They're walking slower, but they're still walking. And Iverna leads you to a clearing. Indeed, were it not for the interruption, you probably would have reached the clearing before the sunset. And so she starts gesturing to Talon and to Pickled Pete. And the goats are ordered into two groups, and she orders that camp is set up. Meanwhile, the hatted one, he prepares a fire, the campfire. And this is the first work you've actually seen him do. He digs a fire pit. What are you doing while camp duties are going on?
I am going to be digging our own fire pit because I'm assuming that Elf Lady does not really want our company.
Would you like to make a roll for that?
Yes.
Okay, give me an insight check.
$15.
Okay, so with a 15, you can tell that Iverna the Night Breeze has huge respect for Sildar. She sees him as a warrior, and it's almost a case of idolization. It's not quite, but in the modern vernacular, you could say that she's a fangirl, and she has styled herself on Sildar, which sort of adds to his legend somewhat. And the way she walks, the way she holds herself, the way she looks out at the horizon, even the way she sets her shoulders, it's been bugging you for a while, Corvus, but it's uncanny, the similarities. And you realize that actually this elf has modeled herself after Sildar to such an extent that it's like looking at a younger Sildar. And with that knowledge, you recognize that she is a professional. She wants the job to get done. She has no tolerance for what she considers to be idiocy. She does not suffer fools gladly. She believes that you are the leader of this band. She looks to you as being the most competent. She looks to you as being the most experienced. She recognizes you as a fellow warrior.
Where did she get that idea?
Your saber.
I don't know these morons.
You were traveling with Sildar, and you've been traveling with these morons. She thinks you're in charge, and so she believes that since you're in charge, she's holding you accountable for them. She thinks that Notus is an idiot. She thinks that he's basically an adolescent, the equivalent of a 13-year-old throwing his weight around, who's gonna get himself burned in fire, a cross between a toddler and an adolescent. She thinks Joe Mibbs is a moron for alerting the dragon. And she
To be
thinks that
fair,
you're the only responsible
right.
person. Sorry, what were you saying?
I said to be fair, she's right.
Well,
Well, yes.
yes, technically true, but no, yes, sure.
So,
Some would believe.
with your insight roll,
True, but also not even slightly.
with your insight roll, she has no problem with you sharing a campfire with them. She just wants you to do your job and keep your people under control.
In that case, I'm going to order the others to make the campfire while I stand over them, watching them like I'm presiding over the situation.
Just like she is.
Wow.
Oofta. Okay.
Okay, so
I will embrace my position of foreman, all right? I don't know where this came from, but I'm accepting the role.
Sure, why not?
So I
Oh.
would like to ask the two of you, Mr. Joe Mibb and Notus, are you going to accept the assumed leadership of Corvus, the ex-privateer?
Corvus.
I mean, yeah, sure.
No, wait, hold on a second, Tim. Sorry, Joe, hold on one second. Corvus. Yes. You have sway, but let's not forget, we are equals here. Stilgar gave us this job to do as equals. Let's
Indeed.
not get ahead of ourselves, shall we
Indeed.
say.
I contribute through tactical support. Now get to work.
Now get to work. Joe's
I-
just going along with it. He's already started digging.
If my father could see me now, I will go help Mr. Joe prepare the whatever we're doing.
Now, since you are standing watch, and since Ivana the Night Breeze is standing watch, you gain advantage on this roll, and the other two gain disadvantage. Roll me perception.
Oh no. What now?
Well, we'll see what you see and what you hear.
Yeah.
And maybe what you smell on the breeze, if you can smell past the goats.
19.
Okay, so Corvus, you smell something on the air. What are your two rolls, Joe and Notus?
Rolling it now. Wait, did you say disadvantage?
Disadvantage.
Oh, okay. In that case, let me change this. There we go. 8.
14.
I'm too busy digging.
Take the lesser roll, Peter.
Yep, 14.
Okay, so with that, 14 is enough that you realize something is slightly off, but you're not quite sure what. And with Joe, you're just too busy digging the pit, and the smell of the goats, well, the smell of the goats is the smell of the goats, and these
Yeah.
are goats. And so you don't even notice. But you Corvus, you do notice. There are 5 shifting shadows in the far tree line. And in the far tree line, you see them moving. And Iverna the Night Breeze, who got a 17 on her perception roll, also sees them moving. And she's keeping herself planted, feet apart, shoulders slightly relaxed, with her left hand still on her scabbard. But she's put away the staff. And now her right hand is just hovering at her sword belt. And she's staring off into the trees, the same trees that you're staring off. She's seen them. And they look like humanoid figures, but you're not quite sure. It's kind of dark. And you don't have dark vision.
Corvus draws his saber and his pistol.
Okay,
He is just going to be at the ready for this.
so Joe,
Yes.
do you notice that your intrepid foreman has drawn his saber and his pistol?
Probably. I look up and I say, "What is it?"
Shadows.
Where?
Can't quite tell what they are, but they're there. In the trees.
Can I try another perception check?
You may try another perception check. So can you, Peter, and this time you have advantage. DC is
Sweet.
13, because you know where to look.
So, oh my goodness. 10.
22.
Okay, so notice the elf. You see what Iverna the Night Breeze sees. And it looks a little different in the dark. In the dark, everything looks a little different, but you have dark vision. And you have seen these markings before. In fact, you saw them on 2 bodies lying in the road.
Oh boy.
These are orcs, and they are in war paint. And they are carrying shields, they're carrying spears, and they're carrying orcish warbows. And they are milling around the trees. What do you do?
At that point, I shall pull out my throwing daggers and pulling out my daggers and looking to Corvus and Joe, seeing if they have noticed as well. I will whisper, "Orcs, be at the ready."
I'm still scanning. I can't see nothing.
Corvus will respond way ahead of you.
What do you do?
For them to make the first move.
Should we?
They
All
haven't
right.
attacked. They could just be expeditionary.
That is true. Or they could wait for us to fall asleep and then drag us off to some godforsaken place. I will, still holding my daggers, look to the forest. Do they recognize that we've noticed them?
They've been watching you, and they're still milling around. And they notice that you've drawn your weapons, and you see with your dark vision that they tense up, and they had their shields on their arms, but now they have established what looks like a shield wall. But you recognize that this is in response to you drawing your weapons.
I see. Okay. Then I will slowly, like, not ready myself. I'll sort of relax myself just a little bit and not step forward, but sort of stand at ease a bit and just say, "Evening, travelers."
Don't talk to them.
But
Don't acknowledge them. Never. Like, yeah.
All right.
I, as foreman, veto that before it even happens. Do not interact.
Do not engage.
I see. All right. Then I will simply stand up and
No, you already spoke. You already
No!
spoke. He shut you down, but you already spoke.
Corvus
right.
will lunge forward and clap his hand over. Dang it.
Okay, roll me athletics, Pius. Just roll me athletics. If you get a nat 1, you trip and you fall.
Wait, where is he? Am I in the middle of the two? Because
You
that
have
would be
told
funny.
me where you've positioned. So where would you like to be? Would you like to be in the middle of the two?
I would love to be in the middle of the two.
Okay, you were in the middle of the two, digging the fire pit, shovel in hand.
Yes.
Notice is on your left.
19. Result, sorry, 22.
Okay, so you spring into action. You clap your hand over his mouth, even as he says "evening," and
Just
just
shit.
as a squeak, which goes. And so, Iverna, the night breeze, looks at you, notice, and she just you cannot even begin to describe the look of disgust that's in her gaze. I don't quite know how you've managed it, but she looks at you as if you are scum, which isn't even on her boot, as if you are the most ignorant, moronic liability to ever darken her doorstep.
Which you kind of are.
And she grits because, like Sildar, who doesn't like speaking unless speaking is absolutely necessary, she says, they do not speak our tongue.
Oh.
Would you like to shut him up, Corvus, or would you like to let him
Yes.
continue to squirm
I
on?
will shut him up.
Can I roll another perception check?
Roll another perception check. First, how do you shut him up?
I am going to wrap my knuckles against the side of his head.
Stupid.
Basically a backhand.
Okay, I assume you're not actually trying to hurt him. You're just trying to.
No, it's more like slapping some sense into him sort of thing.
So, Peter, how well does Notice respond to this?
He is affronted, but he tenses. It's just like he doesn't look like he's like emotional from it. He just looks like fine, like indignant.
You know, for the viewers at home, we're going to have to actually clarify at some point how old, in human terms, Notice actually is. He may be whatever he is, but in human terms,
Like this man's
He
great
looks like a
grandfather.
75-year-old man. No.
Ugh. Yeah, I shut up. I like release like I'm just quiet while he even if he has his hand over my mouth, I'm just not speaking at all, and I'm just
Iverna the Night Breeze steps forwards, and she's got her eyes on the orcs, and one of the orcs very cautiously steps forwards, still holding his shield. And his shield is a round affair of wood, and it's got white paint on, just like the other two orcs, which had white paint on. And he keeps his eye on Iverna Nightbreeze. Everybody give me a perception check, please. And tell me what your passives are, whichever one is highest.
I finally rolled a 17.
12.
Okay, so you've got 12. Sorry, what was your, well, you've got a 19, Peter, so that's fine. Okay, so I'm gonna roll stealth because I just want to make sure that everything is fair and dandy. Okay, so that is a stealth of 20. And
Dang it.
You guys don't actually notice that the one that was digging the fire pit, your hatted companion, is no longer there, but you do, with such high rolls, you feel slight movement, but only slight, and then it's gone. It's almost as if there was a light breeze drifting against the back of your arm, and then it's gone. So you pay almost no mind to it. But notice you feel that there was someone there, and then not so much. But Pickled Pete is off doing his own thing, and Talon has actually stepped up, and he's standing near Iverna the Night Breeze, clutching his staff, and he's in a slight defensive stance. One foot is slightly in front of the other, but he's not actually going to charge in and attack without orders. So the orc bearing the shield steps forwards just a little more, and he's on the road now because you guys are off the road to the left, and the orcs are in the trees to the right. And so with his spear, he points to his shield and he drums on it twice. Everybody roll me insight.
Well,
15.
11.
Okay, so Pius, I'm actually going to give you advantage on this roll because you're a privateer, and having been a sailor on a ship, you understand hand gestures better than most. So please give me another roll. So Corvus, it's at the tip of your tongue. You can't quite place it. You feel like you almost know what's going on, but not quite. And it's probably the fact that there are 4 heavily armed orcs just lurking in the tree line, and you've just seen a dragon. So you're still a little frazzled. Your nerves are a little frayed. Notice you have no idea what's going on. But you, Joe Mib, you notice that the 2 taps on the shield are actually quite deliberate. And then when he gestures with the butt of the spear rather than the pointy end of the spear towards you, all of you, in a sweeping arc, and then he taps his shield 2 more times, and he's looking at you without his shoulders being tense, you understand that he's asking about his companions. Have you seen his friends?
I am going to do something either very stupid or very smart.
don't.
And I am going to lay down my shields. And I turn my head towards Corvus and Notice, and I say, he's asking if we've seen his companions. I'm assuming those are the ones by the road. Did they have white shields too?
They didn't have any shields, but they had the same war paint on.
They had the okay.
Markings.
I take a step closer with my hands up, showing no weapons or anything, and then I point to myself and I shake my head, and then I draw a line across my neck. Basically, I didn't do it, but they're dead.
So I'm gonna roll for the orc just to see if he understands what you are saying. That is a 20. So the orc, he looks downcast, and then he sits down cross-legged with his shield by his side, and he bows his head, and then he sticks his spear into the ground. And the orc has a long top knot and a ponytail. The rest of his head has been shaved. but he's got a top knot and a ponytail. And you see that there are pieces of metal in this top knot. And these are finely worked metal. Even in the darkness under the stars, you see that these finely worked pieces of metal are glinting. And he spreads his hand out and he doesn't say anything. And the orcs just stand rigid, still in a shield wall. And there's just complete silence. Is there anything you would like to do for the next minute?
I will take a few steps closer and sit across from him and bow my head as well.
What about you, Corvus? What about you, Notice?
I am going to put my weapons away. I'll keep my hand on the hilt of my saber, but the sword will go back in its sheath and the pistol back in its sling.
Seeing our leader do it, I will also reductively just put away my thing and just sort of sit down. There's a fire to be made. I'll try to make it and just like
So
let
you
them
go
do.
back to preparing the camp, Notice.
Yes, and just work on the fire. They're handling it. I'll just leave it where it's at.
Okay, so you see Iverna Nightbreeze's gaze flicker at you in irritation, Notice, because this is a solemn moment and everybody is standing stock still, honoring the fallen, and you have broken that with your movement. But she doesn't say anything. It's just a flicker of irritation. And after about 2 minutes, 1 minute per orc, the orc leader, or at least the one who's being the most vocal, stands up and he presents to you, Joe, his shield. And he just offers it to you.
I'm going to stand as well, and I will take his shield and I will offer him one of my own.
And he looks visibly surprised at this. And he hesitates. And he looks at your shield and then he looks back at you. And then he bows rather gruffly. And you can tell that he's not very familiar with human customs. And so bowing does not come naturally to him. But he's bowing because he understands a little bit about human customs and he is trying to be respectful, trying to meet you where you're at. And so he accepts presumably the light shield.
Yes, yeah.
And he looks at it and he puts it on his arm. And then he takes his hand and he knocks against it a couple of times. And then he nods his head firmly and he goes, "Arr!" And then he steps back and he leaves the spear in the ground. And then he smacks his fist where his thumb and his forefinger are against the shield 3 times. And then he nods to you again. And then he steps backwards. And the orc troop, they turn and they just continue towards, well, down the path where Leyland is. And so you see them march off into the night, and the orc leader is the last one, and he's left his spear there. But you see there is respect in his eyes for you, Joe. And he tags along with the rest of them. And once this is gone, Iverna the Nightbreeze, she does not release a big sigh, but her shoulders relax. Her jaw relaxes. But your hatted friend is nowhere to be seen. What would you like to do?
I will put this shield on my back and then go help Notice prepare the campfire.
Roll me an insight right before you go help prepare the fire.
Okay. 10.
Okay, that will be enough. The spear has been left there as a peace offering for you. It is-
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to give you the stats of the Orca shield. And the Orca shield is like one of your heavy shields. So it has 3/4 cover. It has 12 HP points. And it will give you cover of +5.
Okay.
So make a note of this. So that is session 2. And next time we will see how you arrive in Phanderlin. So I hope everybody had fun watching this. Do you guys have any parting comments? Would you like to have any interactions right before we break?
I'm all good.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Corvus will just go back to watching the others work. Just sinking in this new role of leader that he just gained de facto.
And now for the cliffhanger. Iverna the Night Breeze comes up alongside you, Corvus, and she mutters loud enough for you to hear, but mostly to herself. Why? Why in the Seldarine did Sildar choose him? And that is where we will end. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And we will continue next time. Looking forward to seeing you. Bye for now.